Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle, and this is my Cloak and Dagger Christmas recommendations video for the haul. I will put the link to the Cloak and Dagger Christmas announcement video up in the cards. If you haven't watched that yet, I would recommend you start there so that this makes sense. So, the prompts this year are inspired by the rooms from the game of Clue, and so the recommendations in this video will be for the haul. So for this prompt, the book is to read a new to you mystery subgenre, author, or series. So I'm going to give you some recommendations for some of the kind of major subgenres. There's a lot of subgenres, so I've chosen some for you, and I'm going to give a few recommendations for each subgenre. So the first is a cozy. Now, I don't tend to read a ton of cozies. I do read cozies. For this one, I'm going to recommend the Vicky Hill series by Hannah Dennison, a Vicky Hill exclusive from 2008. This is a fun, cozy series set in England. Vicky Hill is a journalist in her town of Gipping on Plym. So that's my cozy recommendation. These are just a fun series. And so bonus prompts for you for this book in particular, a Vicky Hill exclusive, is the billiards room. So that's to read a book that has a sport or a game involved. And so they talk about hedge jumping in this book. And if you want to know what that is, I recommend you read the book to find out. You can also use this book for the study, the prompt of the study, because Vicky Hill is a journalist. The traditional subgenre, often you get like the writers from the golden age of detection fiction often will fit nicely into the traditional category of subgenre. But you'll also get modern writers who kind of their books feel like traditional mysteries, where they're not like totally cozies, and yet they are traditional in the sense that they are a puzzle mystery where you kind of have a fair chance of figuring out the mystery by the end. And so for this category, I want to recommend Who Killed the Curate by Joan Coggin. This is from 1944. This is a fun book. I had never heard of this author before, and she wrote a number of books in this series, and so now I'm going to try and find them because these are really fun. The main character is Lady Lupin. Lady Lupin Lorimer Hastings. She is, in this book, newly married to the vicar of St. Mark's Parish in Glanville, Sussex. And so this one is really fun. She is a great character. She really wants to fit in and do a good job as the wife of the vicar in her village. But she's also kind of more of a big city girl, and so in this one she's trying to solve the case, and she brings in some friends of hers from the city, as well as Andrew's nephew. Yes, a British Secret Service agent. So there you go. Bonus prompts. You can use this book for the lounge because although it was written in 1944, the author said it in 1937. So yeah, this one is a really fun one. There is also the subgenre of police procedural. So in this book, the main characters are police officers, and you see them going about their business of solving a case using the procedures that a police officer would to solve a case. So you quite often get the different ranks involved, and they go out and they investigate, they interview suspects, they collect evidence, all of that stuff. So I've got a couple for this one. The first one is This Is the Last Detective by Peter Lovesey. This is the first in his Peter Diamond series. This is from 1991. This is a great police procedural series. It's set in Bath in England, and Peter Diamond is a detective superintendent And he is called the last detective because it feels like he is the last of his kind. The old school detective, the gumshoe, who solves crimes by question and answer, door stopping, and deduction. And I really enjoy this series. There is often some element of literary, the literary world, or the author really makes good use of the setting of it being in Bath to add to the story. And in this one in particular, you can use this bonus prompt for the library as well, because there are Jane Austen letters play a big part in this mystery. The other police procedural I want to talk about is the series by Iain Pears. This particular one is called The Immaculate Deception. The first in the series is called The Raphael Affair, and it's from 1990. This is a series about the art theft squad in Rome. So the main character is Flavia Di Stefano, and she works for the art theft squad in Rome. I find that that specific area of police work is so fascinating, and to have it be in Rome, I mean, come on, right? So this is a great series. I'm slowly collecting them as I find them, and each book, there's something about a painting or a statue or something, and so they look into thefts of great works of art, and it's a really entertaining series. The next subgenre I want to give recommendations for is humor. I often will just really love a good light-hearted series. So humor is different from cozies. Oftentimes cozies are also funny. But this humor subgenre, humors aren't necessarily cozy. But sometimes they can be. The first one I want to talk about is the Maggody series by Joan Hess. This is the first in the series, Malice in Maggody, from 1987. So this is a series with Arlie Hanks, who is the chief of police of Maggody, population 705 or something like that. It's set in Arkansas, and I find them very funny. There is a cast of really quirky, odd characters, but they're good, solid mysteries. So Arlie Hanks moves back home from the big city after a divorce, and becomes the chief of police, and so she's got, her mom is there, and just a really great cast of characters. I find this series really quite funny. I find myself really relating to this series, even though it's set in Arkansas. I've never been to Arkansas, I don't live in Arkansas, but I did grow up in a town of 800, so I understand how small towns like that work. I mean, 800, that is small. And there is just something about a town that size that I just really love. Bonus prompt, you could use this series for the kitchen because it is a small town. It is very much a small town. And then the other series I want to recommend for humor is the Peculiar Crimes Unit series by Christopher Fowler. This is the first, called A Full Dark House, from 2003. This series is fantastic. I find it very funny, but this is another one of those series where you have to go into it understanding that it's just that little bit different. Unlike the Air Affair, which I talked about in a previous video, this takes place in our world, and yet it feels like maybe not quite. So you do have to suspend your disbelief a little bit for this series, but I am more than willing to go for it. I love it. So the Peculiar Crimes Unit is headed by detectives Arthur Bryant and John May. who are older detectives. Arthur Bryant particularly has his own way of investigating cases. Really unusual things happen. Sometimes there are supernatural elements to the cases, but really very entertaining. And the unit, each member of the unit is a great addition to the cast, and I can highly recommend this series. The next subgenre that I want to recommend books for is the spy/espionage subgenre. I don't read a lot, I'll admit, from this subgenre, but there are a couple of series that I do enjoy. The first one is Daniel Silva's Gabriel Allen series. I haven't read all of this series. I've actually only read a few, but I've really enjoyed the ones that I've read. This is the first in the series called The Kill Artist. Now, Gabriel Allen is a Israeli intelligence agent whose cover is an art restorer, and then he decides to try and leave intelligence work and just be an art restorer, but of course that doesn't really work. And so I think what I like about this series is less that it's about a spy and more about the art restoration, which I find really fascinating. So yeah, this series is good. There is a lot about art and art restoration because that's his cover. So yeah, if you're looking for a good spy espionage series, you might want to give the Gabriel Allen series a try. And then the other one I want to recommend is Mick Herron's Slough House series. This is Slow Horses from 2010. This is the first in this series. And what I love about this is that it's just that little bit different. So, Slough House. Let us be clear about this much at least. Slough House is not in Slough, nor is it a house. Slough House is Jackson Lamb's kingdom, a dumping ground for members of the intelligence service who've screwed up, left a secret file on a train, blown a surveillance, or become drunkenly unreliable. They're the service's poor relations, the slow horses. And bitterest among them is River Cartwright, whose days are spent transcribing mobile phone conversations. So, these agents that they want to get rid of but can't fire get moved over to Slough House, and this is a good series. Like I said, because it's just that little bit different, but it is definitely spies and espionage, and so yeah, this is a really fun spy/espionage series. The next subgenre that I want to give recommendations for is hard-boiled, and in this case I'm including private investigators and noir in kind of all in one big subgenre soup, let's say. So the first series I want to recommend here is the Kinsey Milhone series by Sue Grafton. This is the last in the series that she wrote before she passed away, called Y is for Yesterday. Kinsey Milhone is a private investigator in California in the 80s. And that's what I love about this series. Sue Grafton wrote the entire series in the 80s, and I love that set in the 80s. This one was written in 2017. The series did start being written in the 80s, but she compressed the time so that the entire series takes place in the 80s. And I actually really enjoy that about it. It kind of handicaps Kinsey as a private investigator because she does not have access to the internet and cell phones and all that stuff, and so she still uses a typewriter, she uses index cards, she has to find pay phones when she needs to get a hold of people, and I really like that aspect of these books. And so she kind of has to go old school, as we might say, to solve her cases, and so I really like this as a private investigator series. Also, I want to recommend Iain Rankin's John Rebus series. This is the first in the series, Noughts and Crosses, from 1987. This book kind of launched the subgenre of tartan noir. This is set in Edinburgh in Scotland, and John Rebus is a detective on the police force. So these are great. These are gritty. You could also call these police procedurals, but I just really enjoy this series. There's a great sense of time and place in this series. Great descriptions of, I think it is Edinburgh, is it? It's not Glasgow. I think it is Edinburgh. Anyway, I really enjoy this series. And then finally, I want to recommend Echoes of Lies by Jo Bannister. This is also from a series. This one is 2001. And in this series, it's sort of a private investigator, but she doesn't have a private investigator's license. So the main character is Brodie Farrell, and she finds things for a living. But basically she's a private investigator, let's just say. So I haven't actually read this entire series. I've read a good number of them from this series, but I want to recommend this book in particular because I found the plot in this one, the themes in this one, really very fascinating. So in this book, she is asked to find a person. She's asked to locate the whereabouts of Daniel Hood. And so she does it. She finds him, she gives the information to her client, and she thinks that her job is done. But then Daniel Hood is found tortured and left for dead, and now Brodie Farrell is feeling extremely guilty. So the first chapter of this book is very, very harrowing, just so you know. But what I love about this plot, Daniel then, once he recovers, comes to Brodie and asks her to find out what happened, because it was a case of mistaken identity, and the men who were torturing him wanted to know about someone called Sophie. And so he wants to understand what happened to him. But his response to his situation is what makes this book so fascinating, because Brodie is all about, like, don't you want revenge, and how are you even, like, getting out of bed every day? And his response to what happened to him is really fascinating. So just answering those questions of, like, how do you behave after an event like that in your life, and how do you react to the people who did that to you, and how do you move on with your life? All of those things are kind of delved into in this book. And I read this book years ago, but it really stayed with me for that reason. And I'm actually keeping this one from the library because I want to reread it, because yeah, it was just really, really interesting. All right, the next subgenre I want to talk about is the caper or the heist. Now, those are kind of different. So a caper is like a lighthearted, a lighthearted, I don't know, romp of a story, kind of. Really though, and the reason why these go together is because both of these are kind of from the perspective of, the criminal. In the heist, it's a group of people who are planning to steal something, and a caper can be similar, but it doesn't have to be about a theft. But really they're kind of from that perspective of the people who are planning to do something that's against the law, essentially. So the first book that I want to recommend here is Virgin on the Rocks by Michael Butterworth. This is from 1985. This was really fun. So this is set in Paris in 1933. Aspiring novelist Bernard Fosdyke. He arrives from Berlin, and he is caught up in a wild and daring plan devised by his rescuer, master art forger Harold Hiram Levy. And the scheme is to exchange one of the Louvre's Da Vinci masterpieces for a Hal Levy copy of the same. And this was really fun. This is a heist, very much a caper. It's kind of both, really. And bonus prompt, you could use this for the lounge because it is set in 1933. You can also use it for the library because there is reference to novelists. The main character is an aspiring novelist, but he also meets up with Ernest Hemingway and other artistic heroes of the 30s. So this one was really fun. Another recommendation is the Fox and O'Hara series by Janet Evanovich and Lee Goldberg. This is the first in the series called The Heist from 2013. This one is really fun. The main character, there's two main characters. FBI Special Agent Kate O'Hara is chasing down, she's kind of known for chasing down the world's most wanted criminals. The other main character is Nicholas Fox, who is a con man, and Kate O'Hara manages to find him, but he manages to talk himself out of jail by saying that he will work with her to take down other major criminals around the world. So it's a really fun setup for a series. Bonus prompt, you can also use this book for the conservatory because there is a lot of travel in this book. Really fun series. All right, my next subgenre is the paranormal slash supernatural. I don't read a ton in this subgenre, but I do have a couple of recommendations here. The first is the Lizzie and Diesel series by Janet Evanovich. This is kind of like an offshoot from her Stephanie Plum series. Diesel is a character that shows up in the Stephanie Plum series sometimes, and in this series he is the main character along with Lizzie, who is a chef. She is a pastry chef. So there is definitely like paranormal involved in here because we're not entirely sure what Diesel is. Like, is he a wizard? We don't really know. It's a little bit nebulous. But this is a fun series. Bonus prompt, you could use this for the kitchen because Lizzie is a pastry chef. And then I want to recommend the Aunt Dimity series by Nancy Atherton. This is the first in the series, Aunt Dimity's Death, from 1992. This is also a cozy, but there are supernatural elements because Laurie Shepherd is the main character. And in this first book, she finds out that she has inherited a cottage in England. She's American. She inherits a cottage in England from someone named Dimity, who she never realized was a real person. Her mother told her stories about someone called Dimity, and it turns out that Dimity was a real person that her mother had met during the war. They drove ambulances together, and Laurie Shepherd has inherited her cottage in England. The supernatural or paranormal aspect to this series is that she also inherits this journal. And when she opens it, handwriting will sometimes appear, and it's Dimity talking to her from the other world. I don't really know, but I go with it. It's because it's really fun, and so she'll talk to Dimity, and Dimity will respond by writing in this journal. And when they're done, then the writing disappears. And so it's really fun. It's cute. Dimity helps her out with the cases. And this is just a really fun, lighthearted series. Next up is historical mysteries. Now, this is my favorite of the subgenres, and so I had to stop myself from going crazy here. But I do have some recommendations. So the first one is The King's Spy by Andrew Swanston. This is from 2012. This is a series, but this is the first one. They are set in England in the early Restoration No, sorry, the Civil War. So it's before the Restoration, it's the Civil War. 1643 is the first book in the series. The main character is Thomas Hill, who runs a bookshop in Romsey, which is kind of on the south coast of England. But he gets called to Oxford because a stranger knocks on his door informing him that the king's cryptographer has died, and the king, who is aware of Thomas's expertise in codes and ciphers, summons him to Oxford. And Thomas discovers on arrival that nothing in court is straightforward. There's evidence of a traitor in their midst. Brutal murder follows brutal murder, and when a vital message is intercepted, encrypted with a notoriously unbreakable cipher, more lives are in danger. So this is a really fun series. I love the time period during the Civil War. I love the cryptology aspect of it, of deciphering codes and ciphers, which I find really interesting. This is just a really good series. Thomas Hill is a great character, and a bonus prompt, you could use this for the library because he runs a bookshop. The next series I want to recommend is sorry, I just totally forgot her name. Eleanor. Yes. This is Priscilla Royal. The first book in the series is called Wine of Violence. This is from 2003, and this is set in England in 1270. King Henry III is on the throne, but the Simon de Montfort rebellion is over, and in the small priory of Tyndale on the remote East Anglian coast, the monks and nuns of the Order of Fontevraud long for a return to tranquil routine. Their hopes are dashed, however, when the young and inexperienced Eleanor of Winthorpe is appointed as their new prioress over someone of their own choosing. Nor was Eleanor's own prayers for a peaceful transition answered. Only a day after her arrival, a brutally murdered monk is found in the cloister garden, and Brother Thomas, a young priest with a troubled past, arrives to bring her more personal grief. This is a really good series. I really enjoy it. Interesting characters, interesting plots. The next series is the Thomas Chalner series by Susanna Gregory. This is the first, called Conspiracy of Violence, from 2006. This is set during the Restoration, so it's later than the Thomas Hill series. This is 1662, and Thomas Chalner returns from abroad, and he wants to work for the king, and he ends up getting a position with the Earl of Clarendon. And in this book, he is sent to investigate the rumor that there is a cache of gold buried in the Tower of London. Again, I really enjoy this series. It is a fascinating time period, really great characters, really good mysteries. All right, my last recommendation is The Hangman's Daughter by Oliver Potts. Sorry, I'm not saying that last name correct at all. This is a German series set in Germany in 1659 in Bavaria. They are translated from the German by Lee Chadenia. Sorry, I am totally butchering these names. This first book in the series is from 2008, and I really enjoy this series because they're a little bit different. They're set in a time period that I enjoy but don't know a lot about because it's in Germany. So they're in Bavaria, and the main character is Jacob Kuzel, and he is the hangman. And he lives outside the village walls with his family. Another main character is his daughter Magdalena, and then the town physician's son. And so as the hangman, it's his job to execute prisoners, but also because of the time period, his job was to torture suspects to get a confession so that they can then execute them. So it's horrific, but really very interesting. So there's a lot of like really interesting historical, political, social aspects to this series that I really enjoy. They're very well written. The hangman is like, you know, it's a job that the people want someone to have, but they don't want to know anything about it. So the family is ostracized. They have to live outside the walls of the village. Magdalena, as the hangman's daughter, has no real chance of marriage because nobody wants to marry the hangman's daughter. So there's just really a lot of interesting social and political aspects to these stories. And yeah, like I said, they're very well written, really interesting. All right. And then the last subgenre that I want to talk about is the medical/legal subgenre. So on the legal side, I want to recommend My Sister's Grave by Robert Dugoni. This is from 2014. This is the first in a series. And you might be wondering why I'm recommending this under legal and not police procedural, because the main character is a detective. Tracy Crosswhite is a detective in Seattle. But in this first book in the series, we learn about the disappearance of her sister from 20 years before, and something happens that encourages and opens that investigation again. And the reason I'm recommending this in legal is because a major part of this story is the trial. So there are a lot of courtroom scenes. That's a huge part of this story, and it was just a really interesting story, a really interesting mystery. Next up is the Baker Street Brothers series by Michael Robertson. I don't have a copy of this one. It didn't come in from the library in time, so I'll include a picture here. This is a series from 2014. I think the first one came out. This is a series about two brothers who have a law practice on Baker Street in London. And what makes this so interesting is that part of the lease that they signed for their offices includes the fact that they must answer any letters that arrive addressed to Sherlock Holmes. So that's kind of a fun little piece of the series. They know that Sherlock Holmes isn't real, but letters come in addressed to him and they have to answer them. And so it's just a really fun series, a little bit different. And then I want to recommend, this is The Coroner by M.R. Hall. This is the first one in the series and this is from 2009. The main character is Jenny Cooper, and she is the coroner. So she is a lawyer who is appointed coroner for the Severn Vale district. And so I liked that it's kind of a different aspect of the legal field than you might normally read about. You get a lot of what the job, like what does a coroner do, how does a coroner's court work, which I find fascinating. And so this is a really fun series. And then on the medical side, I want to recommend The Way of All Flesh by Ambrose Parry. This is the first in their series from 2018. This is also a historical mystery series because it is set in Edinburgh in 1847. And the main character in this book is a student of medicine, and he shows up, he wants to apprentice for Dr. Simpson. And so the medical student is Will Raven, and Dr. Simpson is a renowned doctor who is doing a lot of work in the study of anesthesiology. I'm sorry, I have a hard time saying that word. This was really good. Ambrose Parry is the pseudonym for a collaboration between Chris Brockmeyer and Marissa Heitzman. They are a married couple who live in Glasgow, and Chris Brookmeyer is a famous author. His wife is a doctor, a consultant anesthetist. Anesthetist? I can't say my words. So there's a lot of good, accurate information here about that. This was a really, really interesting book, really interesting time period. Definitely counts on the medical side of things. There is a lot about medicine and in particular anesthesiology. So my Agatha Christie recommendations for you. I want to recommend N or M from 1941. This one counts for the spy and espionage subgenre. This is a Tommy and Tuppence series book. And yeah, there is a lot of spying and espionage and shenanigans in N or M. For the historical subgenre, I want to recommend Death Comes as the End from 1944. This is the only historical mystery that Agatha Christie wrote. It is set in Egypt 4,000 years ago. Very fun. And then finally, The Sittaford Mystery or Murder at Hazelmoor from 1931. I want to recommend this one for the supernatural / paranormal subcategory because in this one there is a seance in which the message is that Captain Trevelyan is dead, and when they go to his cottage just to check up on him, they discover that he is actually dead. So those are my recommendations for the haul. This was a really long video, but I wanted to give recommendations for a good amount of subgenres so that hopefully you can find a book or a new subgenre for you for Cloak and Dagger Christmas. So thanks for watching this video, and I will see you for another video soon. Bye.